What is the universal rule in League of Legends? While there's obviously more than one, the rule that pertains to today's video is this: don't die. No matter what champion you play or what role you main, everyone tries their best to adhere to that directive, for the repercussions of dying are stated in plain writing. If you die, not only do you needlessly give experience and gold to the enemy team, but your loss of presence on the map can lead to further actions being taken as a result of said enemy team having one less opponent to worry about. And while there may be such a thing as a quote-unquote worthwhile death, it is always more beneficial to take an option wherein you aren't required or expected to die. Seemingly the only champion whose MO happens to be antithetical to the universal rule of don't die is Karthus, a champion with a checkered history throughout League's tenure, and one that might initially confuse some of you in light of him having been consistently popular throughout the early 2020s. But if you take a look at his performance over the past year and a half, Karthus has been progressively decreasing in pick rate across both jungle and bot lane, to where he now only holds about a 2 to 2.5% pick rate on average across all ranks, uncharacteristically low for a multi-role flex pick. So for today's episode of Why No One Plays, I want to talk about Karthus and what happened that made him go from a constant threat to a pocket pick. Before we get into the video though, I want to just give a shout out to our sponsor for today. Any Dragon Ball fans out there, you'll love this one. Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra came out not too long ago. It's a new 4v4 team battle game that has you play the all too familiar Dragon Ball characters in a MOBA environment. Like with any MOBA, the Dragon Ball fighters are sectioned off into different classes. You have your damage dealers, your tanks who can frontline for your team, and then your more technical characters who come with an array of supportive and crowd control abilities. The goal is to make as perfect of a 4-man squad as you can by navigating the arena to take out enemy players and fight over objectives. Of course, it wouldn't be a MOBA without customization, and Gekishin Squadra is no different. You can personalize your heroes with character skins, entrance animations, and even special finisher effects that you can set to your personal taste. Best thing about Gekishin Squadra is that it's cross-platform. You can play with others on Steam, aka PC, consoles including but not limited to the Nintendo Switch, and even play on mobile for complete comprehensive cross-platform play. And yes, you can connect one account across all devices. If you're interested in scratching your Dragon Ball itch in a MOBA fashion, feel free to use my link on screen or in the description below. Thanks again to Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra for sponsoring the video, but for now, let's get back to it. Karthus is one of those champions known for a particular gimmick. In his case, he's actually got 3 of them. Yet despite all of that, he's one of the most straightforward champions to play. As a member of the original 40 champions, he was the bedrock of the Battle Mage archetype along with Anivia and Ryze. Ryze was considered the magic damage ADC, while Anivia was meant to be the area control mage. Karthus, on the other hand, was a weird combination of the two. An area control magic damage ADC, but with the most unique way of going about it even to this day. For the overwhelming majority of champions in League, the moment they die, their pressure drops to 0. You kill them, they no longer pose a threat to you. And while a few of them may have something enabling them to stay on field for just a bit longer, such as Kog'Maw or Sion, they're generally easy to play around and nothing more than a nuisance if anything. Karthus is the only champion in League who poses a potentially greater threat after dying than if he was alive. Death Defied affords him 7 seconds of continued presence upon taking fatal damage, during which the player can freely use any and all of his attacks at no cost, only locking him out of basically attacking and moving. He's also untargetable, meaning there's no way you can stop him from attacking, and that includes his ultimate, one of the most notorious abilities in the game, and for good reason. Behind the stipulation of being easily the longest non-active channel time of any ability in the game, Karthus can simultaneously blast all enemy champions regardless of their position on the map. A simple premise, but effective nonetheless. Unlike other global ultimates, you can't do anything to avoid this ability through conventional means. Sonya's or other untargetability measures notwithstanding, you are forced to take Requiem's damage, making this one of the most deadly abilities in the game, especially given the fact that it's global. Karthus could be on the other side of the map and God forbid you're at 1 HP thinking you got away. One would assume an easy way to counter Requiem is to either A. kill Karthus before he gets a chance to use it, or B. cancel the channel before it goes through. Neither strategy is a viable avenue of escape to say the least. Again, it's global, he could chill in the fountain and use it. Killing him doesn't stop him from using Requiem either, if anything it guarantees it. Karthus could cast Ultimate without fear of it getting cancelled, and make a last-ditch effort to drag you into the grave with him. Because of these two interactions, Death Defied and Requiem, Karthus can easily force you into a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If you don't give him the time of day, he has an assured way of nuking your whole team. Taking only a couple hundred damage is a trivial concern, but once he gets a few items, Requiem can easily smite you for over 1,000, single-handedly negating any squishy champion's ability to even play the game, let alone contribute any substantial pressure on the map. Sounds like an appealing selling point, doesn't it? The idea that whether alive or dead, whether near the fight or away from it, you can always do big damage against the enemy team. It is, and the reason why Karthus was such a constant presence over the years. So what exactly happened that made him drop off in recent times? The cause of his decline is tied to that very notion, the idea that a big chunk of his pressure is practically guaranteed. When pressure is guaranteed on that wide a scale, it's essentially never allowed to be able to actually follow through on what it does. In a way, despite sharing the same function of being massive teamfight ultimates, Requiem is the complete opposite of a super ultimate like Rumble's Equalizer or Fiddle's Crowstorm. At full power, Fiddle's ultimate's more than thrice the strength of a single Requiem, and that's intentional. When does he ever get to deal the full 5 seconds worth of damage? Extremely rarely. Fiddle, and by extension Rumble and such, are given that kind of busted damage and scaling to account for the difficulty of actually landing the full duration of the ability. Requiem, on the other hand, is given extremely low base damage and scaling to account for how easy it is to land the full force of the ability. Those of you who saw Why No One Plays Annie, you can probably guess where I'm going with this. In order for Karthus to do what his primary directive intends for him to do, he's effectively required to be fed, or at worst, be even compared to everyone else. If he's behind, due to how low the damage of Requiem is, he's ironically way worse than any other battle mage, the class of mages known to always be a threat by virtue of their very high base damage and output. Rumble could be 0-5 down a full item over everyone else, but even in spite of that, you still have to respect his ultimate and Q damage. Against Karthus, Requiem's only a threat if he's got comparable items to everyone else or better. Now to his credit, he can easily snowball a lead since once again the whole premise of the champion is that even if you kill him, he can still attack and do tons of damage, but the nature of his gameplay prevents him from being thrown a bone, so to speak. Taking a look at his balance history, you'll notice that Rai keeps going back and forth with his Q damage, plus 5 damage here, minus 2 damage there, what have you. While it may seem as inconsequential as Irelia losing 5 move speed, the reason for this is that Karthus balances on an incredibly fine line between not doing enough damage to be stupid and doing just enough to be stupid. Most of the time it errs on the side of not doing enough. Layaway's the scenario blast that deals double damage if it strikes only one target. The small hitbox in tandem with the non-immediate cast time makes landing Qs consistently very difficult. If you can do so, the damage quickly ramps up. But Karthus' DPS fluctuates the most out of any battle mage, again the class known to have pretty easily applicable pressure. Other battle mages have point and click or wide area coverage on their attacks, allowing for them to have a strong baseline of pressure. Though Karthus does have an AoE of his own in the form of Defile, the real part of his DPS is of course housed in his Q, which is the only way he's able to break past that soft cap they put on him. Upon realizing that relying on just D and ultimate make you only half as strong as any other mage, players become disillusioned by how underwhelming Karthus feels. Thing is, even though he got nerfed a couple times throughout Season 14, Karthus' win rate has remained largely stable. In fact, he's perennially been one of the best bot laners in the game, and for the most part he maintains a positive win rate in jungle. Reason for that is because Karthus has become sort of like Quinn or Cassiopeia, where the only reason they have such a high win rate is because a few people who do play them are insanely freaking good at them and more importantly actually know how to play them. In fact, Karthus' highest win rate build involves Medjai's, the item that literally rewards you for staying alive. For everyone else, they get the wrong impression of the champion and feel like they're supposed to play him in this way, when in reality the actual Karthus players play him very differently from the impression he gives off. Most people see Death Defied and think it's a get out of jail free card, that they can die 10 times by 20 minutes and be like, oh it's fine, my champion's supposed to die. In reality, Death Defied is more of a hedge than a crutch, if that makes sense. You can use it to hedge your bets, but you still need to make good bets. I'll remind you that dying in League is objectively a bad thing. Deaths give the opposing team bonus gold, experience, and macro momentum, which can easily cascade over the course of a game. Karthus being able to attack while dead doesn't erase the fact that he's still feeding the enemy team when he doesn't necessarily have to. People who don't understand Karthus, aka the majority of us, are tricked into thinking they can go head first into the enemy team over and over and make up for intent feeding by hopefully killing more of them. But they could also potentially navigate that fight without dying at all, or at the very least dying less than they should. Played correctly, the real threat of Karthus is while he's still alive. A full-powered rank 5 Q does more damage than a rank 1 cast of Requiem. 2 full-powered Qs can outdamage a rank 3 cast of Requiem. So in practice, Karthus' ultimate really isn't as scary as it looks. It's only scary when the enemy Karthus is a full item ahead of everyone else. But inexperienced Karthus players tunnel vision into thinking they can just go in, die, and then press ultimate and everything's all hunky-dory. No, that's not the case. Basically what I'm trying to imply is that people misunderstand Karthus because of the way his kit's designed. The vast majority of the League community zeroes in on Death Defied and Requiem and lose games, leading people into thinking he's weak when in actuality Karthus is one of the strongest hypercarry champions in the game. You just have to do a lot more than press R. Which brings me to the other reason why he's been dropping off in relevance. After noticing the real threat of Karthus is the sheer amount of damage his Q can do over the course of a fight, he ends up becoming one of the more difficult battle mages to play and master. Karthus is a completely immobile champion. Furthermore, he doesn't have any semblance of defensive or offensive utility. Other battle mages have a modicum of crowd control and or sustain to make up for the need to fight relatively up close. Karthus only has Wall of Pain, a decent ability in its own right. It's a very strong slow, especially at rank 5, and the 25% shred is part of the reason why he does so much damage. But no shields, no heals, no defensive utility, no hard crowd control, or anything of the sort. Your performance on Karthus hinges entirely on your ability to land Qs, but in the era of hypermobility, hyper rushdown, or honestly just increased tempo, it can feel frustrating to play a champion whose main DPS is wildly inconsistent. Simply put, the consistent part of Karthus, his ultimate and E, are honestly very weak, forcing players to rely on the inconsistent part of Karthus, his Q. If you can't land Qs, you're basically screwed. The reason other full skill shot champs don't deal with the same amount of frustration is because 1. They usually have more generous AoEs, 2. Straight line shots are easier to land than an area blast since you just have to point in their general direction, not their exact location, and 3. Being so far away, even if you miss, you're not at risk of counterattack. Karthus has to play very close to champions, close enough to where most cast members with the dash ability can easily get in range of him. Flying that close to the sun with no protection of any sort makes Karthus an extremely high-risk champion. Currently, however, the reward really isn't worth the risk for players. Most of his peers can achieve the same basic effect as him. Aurelion Sol's got way more consistent DPS and a big teamfight ultimate. Vladimir has a point-and-click Q and big AoEs on his E and ultimate. Ryze, Swain, Rumble, Talia, Victor, they can all do as much basic ability damage as Karthus. What Karthus has that they don't is Requiem, but Requiem is kept in check by the imperative need to be fed for it to actually be strong. In light of that, to make Karthus worth playing over other battle mages, you have to get good at landing Qs, otherwise you're just a strictly worse version of any other battle mage. While we're drawing comparisons, I feel like another reason for his inconsistency is that Karthus is the most counterable battle mage in the game. His Q gets countered by mobility, tempo, and range. His E can get countered by either burst damage or people who can attack him from a far distance, aka range, and the threat of his ultimate can get neutralized by certain champions. For example, an AoE sustain support like Karma or Soraka, or champions who can neutralize damage in their own right. Karthus performs best against a team of all squishies, but even in those scenarios, there are so many items that can counter him like Sterix, Zanyas, Shieldbow and such. For how inevitable Requiem is, he has so much time to react to it, giving ways to undermine how threatening it really is. Although in defense of his opponents, you kinda need to have that because if you don't, Requiem becomes a toxic ability. Even with countermeasures it is. Understanding all of that, the experience of playing Karthus can be polarizing to say the least. Most players know that Karthus is behind since he carries no semblance of guaranteed utility like hard crowd control, percent health damage or anything like that. He'll just end up feeding for the rest of the game. What this means is that players have no choice but to play reckless, even though Karthus isn't a champion with the means and affordability to play recklessly. If anything, his QW&E incentivize careful play. He used to be a mid laner back in the day, but nowadays you see him more in jungle and bot lane for the express purpose of minimizing risk. In jungle, Karthus can freely farm to mid game when his DPS begins to ramp up. Meanwhile, down in bot lane, his support can provide him the utility, setup, and protection to not only make landing Qs more easy, but secondarily bail him out of a bad situation. It's also the reason why he has such a high win rate in those roles. Jungle is of course the more popular of the two, but that comes with a very high learning curve as well. Karthus gets 1v1 by any champion in the early game, unless you're one of those assholes who runs exhaust over flash. As a result, you need to have incredibly good map awareness, enemy jungle tracking, and macro understanding. Most people don't, and their lack of jungle sense gets exacerbated by their false sense of security and thinking their deaths carry less consequence because of death defied. Altogether, Karthus is a hyper carry through and through. He can very easily outdamage most of the champions in the game and requires the enemy team to calibrate how they navigate a teamfight because of him. However, his combination of being immobile and squishy while having to play decently up close causes him to be deceptively hard to play for how simple he is. While battle mages are characterized for being very consistent, Karthus couldn't be further from it. Being one of the few champions in the game who can actually profit from dying, especially if you fight in like a choke point or some tightly closed area where people are face tanking his E and Q without noticing, he can quickly snowball out of control and 1v9 games. But the line between tactical inting and actual inting can be hard to discern, and more often than not, people don't actually know how to play him correctly. His playstyle in general doesn't do a good job encouraging continuous play as a result of that. People might pick him up for a game or two and maybe have one really fun game, but the honeymoon phase wears off extremely quickly for a guy like him. In a way, I suppose he's one part Shen Syndrome and one part Inting Scion. Requiem and Death Defied are so overpowered in concept that the rest of his kit suffers in the process, making it so the player has to play very carefully to actually carry games. Theoretically, he's extremely easy to pick up and play. Circumstantially though, he's extremely difficult to play. only an infinitesimal amount of players are capable of differentiating between tactical inting and actual inting. Karthus was popular throughout the early 2020s when his margin for error was more lenient, but after his recent nerfs in 2024, they made that margin for error practically impossible to overcome for the everyday player, which is the foremost reason why no one plays him outside of like one-tricks. What do you guys think about Karthus? Do you agree or disagree with my points? Let me know in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you like to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.